All right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Lasting Learning Podcast. I am so glad you're here. I say this every week, and every week it's true. The guests just get better and better and better. No offense to whoever might have been my first guest. I'm not saying you're not important, but with 7 billion people in the world, you've made the top of the list. But today we've got 2 amazing educators that are going to be joining us. And for those of you that have been tuning in recent weeks, you know that I'm not necessarily just getting people that commit to the status quo. I'm not getting people that step out and say, hey, follow the script and everything's going to be fine. I'm getting people that are breaking the mold, people that are willing to go out there and knock down walls and then hand out the megaphone so that their voice can be amplified. And that's what we're doing today. We've got 2 guys joining us from New York. And so those of us in the Midwest, we might ask you guys to repeat things a few times. That accent might come through a little rich, but we've got Kris and Gary here today who are just gonna share some wisdom, share who they are as people, share a little bit about an upcoming project that they've got coming out, and just wow us all. So Kris and Gary, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Dave. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're here.
Now, I know there might be a couple people in the world who don't know who you are. So you guys mind taking a second?
Just a few.
Take a second to just introduce yourselves. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Kris Felicello. I'm assistant superintendent in North Rockland, and we're located about 40 miles north of Manhattan, the George Washington Bridge. I've had it's my 25th year in education. I started off, believe it or not, as a phys ed teacher and a coach, and that was my passion. I was a basketball coach, varsity boys coach for 9 years, and then kind of moved over into becoming an athletic director and assistant principal, and then got love doing the principal job, which I never thought I would love it as much. I really got into administration to be an athletic director, and I got the principal job, kept the athletic director piece of it, and decided that I wanted to be a principal in a bigger district, a bigger building, and ended up down in North Rockland as a middle school principal, where I served for 7 years as a principal, and then I went into to become assistant superintendent of human resources, and then now I'm entering my 5th year as assistant superintendent for educational services, and it's been it's been a long, exciting journey, and I just love it. I loved every step of the way, the different things I love about each job. And I'm lucky to work with great people like Gary, who's our English coordinator and teacher. And
here I am. That was a good segue, right? My name's Gary Armida, English teacher at North Rockland. This is my 22nd year, and time has flown. That's for sure. Started out in middle school in another district, and after 5 years came to North Rockland, and it's been home ever since, and it will be home for the remainder of my career. It's an amazing place to work. The people, the kids, everything. I keep saying I have the best job in the world, and I do, because I work with the best people, best kids all the time. So as Kris said, I'm the English department coordinator as well, but the best part of my day are my 3 periods teaching, and and that's where it is. So.
Yeah, and I agree with Gary. I mean, I've worked in a couple of different places, and I always say when we do the hiring piece, and you'll never leave North Rockland because it's such a great place, and I really don't see myself going anywhere else. I love being here. I love the people. I love the teachers, the kids, our boss, our superintendent, our board of ed is amazing. So we're blessed, and they've allowed us, and you talked a little bit about kind of breaking that mold and doing things differently. They've allowed us to think differently and to kind of start asking that question, is this really best for kids, or are we doing a certain thing because that's always the way we've done it around here? And we've been able, I think, to really start gaining some momentum in our district about doing things better for kids, doing things, taking a look from a different and a broader scope of what kids need today. So.
That's good. And, you guys you're my people. And one, Gary, you got a haircut like mine.
That's right.
Kris, you've had this career trajectory that sort of mirrors mine as well. We've all been in the game here for 20 plus years. So we've seen education through a couple of decades. Mm-hmm. And it's always interesting to me when I talk to people who have been in education for this amount of time, especially people that are out there amplifying change. Because in essence, what you're saying is that what you did when you started your career wasn't good enough. isn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it causes a lot of reflection and philosophical mumbo jumbo going on in your head, but could you just talk about that a little bit when you say you got your district to the place where they're accepting change and doing things better for kids? What specifically needs to change? What are you looking at evolving?
I think it really comes down to what do we want for our kids, right? And if, we're both parents and that's probably the job that we care about the most.
Absolutely.
And put the most effort and time into is being dads. And I think about what do I want for my boys and what do you want for them is when they're an adult, when they're 25 years old. And it's very simple. I want them to be healthy. I want them to be happy. I want them to be good people. I want them to be content in the work that they do. But yet, when do we take time in school to kind of address those sort of things, or at least we haven't as much as I think we should. Yeah. And it's kind of always about that point or that grade or that that next step. But really, it's got to be about the now, and it's got to be about looking at that big picture about how what type of people are we helping them to become our students.
Right. Like one of my least favorite phrases, we're training kids for tomorrow. They're leaders for tomorrow. No, they're leaders right now.
There you go.
And it's our job as teachers and educators to really develop that now. I mean, they're already their own advocates out there in the world already speaking up. And, we need to give them the skills to do that now, to the ability to pursue passions without worrying about failing, because half the time I fail all the time and I'm always better the second, third time around. And, we don't give that opportunity a lot because everything is, the number culture. And that's the one thing, I always say, a number never defines you. But you would think, as a teacher, that's what I preach and everything about. But last night with my daughter, I'm driving home and she's like, Dad, I got an 80 on a math test. I'm so upset. I'm like, are you kidding me? You not hear me every day? The number doesn't define you, so that kind of thing. So I think that's one of the things we really need to change our focus. And that's one of my passions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're both, and that's, that's kind of, you ask how we got together. And, we worked together when I was a principal and Gary was the coordinator, and we really didn't know each other that well. And the more we kind of talked education, talked philosophy, realized how aligned we were.
And fantasy baseball.
And fantasy baseball. We have that too. Fantasy baseball. Although he pulled ahead of me this week, final week. And it's like, I don't know. I've fallen out of the money in that. So that's not a good thing, but we'll see.
Let me talk about that relationship and that dynamic between the two of you guys a little bit, if that's all right, because it is pretty cool. And I would argue that there are some that would say it's different. To be in a district where you've got a central office administrator and a classroom teacher who don't just get along professionally, but you get along personally as well. And, we've all heard about the lines that you have to have. You got to make sure that you're not mixing business with pleasure and all of that. Why do you think it works for you guys?
I think because we don't look at things in terms of title or position or it's just like, I know if Gary's trying something out, he's doing it with the best of intentions to try to make things better for our kids. Mm-hmm. He knows that if I'm asking him to do something or asking the English department to do it, that I have the best of intentions. Mm-hmm. And there's never any of that crossing a line because we know ultimately we have the same goal. And I think that's what everybody has in our district is what's best for kids. Right. But how do we channel that in a way that's kind of asking us to look at it different and look at it better. So, that's part of it. And there's a lot of people in the district, whether they're CSEA members, whether they're teachers, whether they're administrators, where we really get along and truly like each other and value each other's opinions. So, that's kind of, I think, how we're able to.
Right. It comes down to trust too. There's this inherent trust. And like Kris said, if he gives me, a job to do, and this is what I really need, I know there's a bigger vision there. And a lot of times with, teaching, your classroom is your world and you don't often get to see the big picture, and you have to trust that the big picture is there and you have someone with a vision, and then you work your part in it. But it also comes back both ways, where I'll come to Kris and say, this really isn't working. Can we try this? And it's always, absolutely. Is it best for kids? Yes, absolutely. So trust is a big thing.
That's good. That's really good. Now, you guys talk a lot about trust and relationships, and you talked about the idea that your families are your most important thing. You speak very, very highly about your district and how your work is to help elevate your district and the students within your district. But you're both also people who don't just sit back and say, my world is my little bubble, and I'm just going to make sure that my little bubble continues to grow. I mean, I've seen the TED Talks, I've seen the blogs, I've seen the podcast. There's a book that's when we're recording this, coming out next week. You guys are amplifying this message everywhere. Why isn't it good enough just to keep it in North Rockland, New York?
You know, I don't want to speak for Gary, but I just love having the conversations with people and being able to build those networks. And really, you know, you think about our whole society through history and you know, how we progress when communication improved, right? So like, you know, when we had writing, and then the printing presses changed things, and then the telephone changed things, and then now more recently the internet has changed things, and you know, we're able to progress. Well, I think you're starting to see that in education. I think we're getting to that tipping point where people like you and I are able to talk, where we would have, you know, 10 years ago, we would have had no way to have even met.
Right.
And so many people out there. So, you know, just trying to share ideas and grow and learn together, and you know, it's expanding, which is getting us to that point in education where it is like that tipping point where it's going to go, and we're really going to start seeing things, because we can already, I don't know, I can feel it. I don't know if you can, and you're part of the country, but I can feel it, where things are getting different. It's not the same old that it was for you know, 100 years when we were trying to build a workforce that was factory workers. Now we want to build thinkers. So,
and I'll just give you a small example to that. So right now I am living and working in Michigan. Back when, Kris, when you and I first connected, I was down in Florida.
Right.
I got this job with your job title right now, central office, assistant superintendent, executive director of curriculum, all of that stuff, without ever stepping foot in the district. Never met the people face to face. It was all virtual like this. And I know there are some people that say, wow, if we would have met you face to face, we would have never made this deal. But the reality is, you're right, though. The world is changing. You know, Thomas Friedman talks about the world going flat. But it's true. There's a lot of change that's taking place. So what are you doing to try to amplify your voices? Right? Like I said, you've got the book.
So we have the book, and you know, like you said, we did the TED Talks, but ultimately, you know, I don't think either one of us claims to be an expert on anything. I think, you know, our strengths lie in the fact that we know that we want to grow, we want to get better, we want to be reflective, we want to look at the mistakes we made in the past and do better. And you know, that's a lot when we talk about the book, and you know, The Teacher and the Admin is the name of our blog and our book, and the title is Making Schools Better for Kids. It's really our thoughts based on our experiences and mistakes we made along the way, things that happened to work along the way, what an administrator may want from a teacher, what a teacher may want from an administrator, so that trust can be built, and how can we work together to kind of move things forward and make sure that our kids, because nobody comes to work, and none of our teachers come and say, hey, I want to be a crappy teacher today. No administrator says, I want to be terrible at my job. Everybody wants to do well, but how do we get people to start saying, just because I did it that way in the past doesn't mean I was wrong, or it was bad, or I was a bad teacher. But now times have changed, and now I want to just keep getting better and improving, and kids have different ways of communicating. So how can we do that?
And you know, I always say, you know, you can be a great teacher in your classroom, but if you don't do anything to amplify it beyond, you're only impacting a relatively small number of kids, which is great. Yeah. But I think we have an obligation to keep pushing, because if we don't, people like you don't, nothing will ever change. So you do have to put yourself out there and amplify and really fight. So every kid has the opportunity to have this type of education that we're all trying to push for.
Yeah, like we did we went to a couple of ed camps, and then we said, we want to run an ed camp here. And just like all the educators in our little part of Rockland County in New York that we were able to meet and talk to, and that had so many great ideas, and you know, those sort of things. It just, I don't know, that's the stuff that, like, after it's over, you're on a high. Like, I'm just so excited, because it's like, oh my God, and you know, we're making a difference, and I got a new idea, and there's so many good people out there that it's great to kind of just expand that network, I think.
Exactly. I hear you. But with every blessing comes a curse as well, you know, and something that I've experienced, especially over the last few months, is the more that your voice gets amplified, the more trolls you seem to pick up, because change is only necessary if there are people still holding on to the status quo. I mean, if everybody just jumped on board, all of us are irrelevant. We're there trying to push change, which means there's going to be other people pushing back. And it's hard at times. I actually had somebody a couple of weeks ago that looked at me and said, wow, you're living the dream right now. You get to go meet all these people and talk to so many amazing people. And my response back was, yeah, but I'm also putting up with a lot of BS all the time too, because I know that I say things at times just to push the envelope and just to try to start the dialogue and start people thinking and talking. I'm wondering, both locally and now globally, now that your reach is really starting to be amplified, have you had people that have pushed back and like said, oh, this is like the teacher and teacher's pet type thing happening? Or I mean, just talk about some of that the stuff that you've had to overcome along with this.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've gotten criticism at different points because, as you said, of pushing the envelope. And sometimes the criticism has been justified because we put stuff out there that maybe wasn't our intent or to polarize people. But I think we take that as a learning experience as well. And just keep going and keep plugging because, if you stop at every bump in the road, or if you kind of shrink at every criticism, or, you have to develop a thick skin if you're doing what you believe in. And again, I don't ever want to come off, and I know Gary never wants to come off as a know-it-all or somebody has all the answers, because we certainly don't. But we just want to share. I mean, listen, I'm sure plenty of people like us that could share their experience in education that would be able to benefit us and everybody else. But we want to be able to do that. And we're kind of taking this up, saying we're going to do it. And if you like it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. And just, keep trying to understand that I want to see it from somebody else's perspective. Because like I said earlier, nobody wants to be bad at their job. Nobody wants to hurt kids. Nobody wants to. So how can I look from their perspective? And then if it's somebody in my district, how can I put them in a position to be successful? Because everybody does have some qualities. Everybody does have some strengths. Even maybe our teachers that we see as the weakest, they have to have some strengths. So how can we bring that out in them? And that's always the challenge, and not quit on them because they've criticized me or Gary or somebody else because maybe they didn't agree or maybe they're threatened.
Right. And it goes in phases too. When we first started, it was like, hey, what are they doing? And then, it became, everything, why are you doing this? And there was a little, but now I feel like we've almost settled in a little bit, because if you just keep doing it and you keep believing it and you walk the walk, and I think
it's made us really kind of be more cognizant too of like, hey, we're right, but we have to do that. Even if you're in a bad mood, or you wake up on the wrong side of the bed.
Exactly. Like sometimes I'll text them like, I got to be the teacher today, and I don't know if I have it in me. So
even things like you go to a building, like I was at some buildings today, and the kids are great, and they really just give you that energy, and people ask, how do you connect with kids? And I'm like, well, you have, give them eye contact, let them know that they're seen, speak with them, but sometimes you're going so fast through the day. Like I was, and I'm like, no, stop and like give this kid 30 seconds to let them know that they're a person that you care about and you see them for who they are. And so, I think it's helped me to be a better educator,
Absolutely.
The writing and putting stuff out there, because it's challenged me to kind of, as you said, walk the walk a little bit more.
Yeah. So, if you're going to put it out there, you got to be ready to defend it, because that's when people will be critical, and they'll say, oh, you just put this out there, but you don't really live this life. And that double standard deteriorates and takes away from all that trust that you've been working so hard to try to build. So, I don't want anybody to think that doing better means doing things easier, because that is so far from the truth. What I'm starting to experience is the more that you try to improve, the harder it gets. Because being where you are right now, safe is easy. Anytime you try something different, it's going to be a struggle, because you're changing habits, you're changing routines, you're changing mindsets, and it's a struggle. So what with you guys right now, talk about what's going well. You guys started your year, 4 or 5 weeks ago now? You're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
What's a success story?
So well, we actually this year, and I feel like I've talked about this so much, but we were part of a committee that looked at homework and homework reform. And we implemented a new policy this year. Our board of education approved it. It's in policy. We no longer refer to homework as homework. It's home learning now. And it was a 3-year process. Yes. We involved parents, students, teachers, administrators, board of ed members. We had several meetings. We did research. We read books. We had kids. Yeah. That was the most important part. And we came up with a product that we're pretty proud of, and we think it's pretty unique in some of the things. Like we have no homework on weekends or over school breaks anymore. We did away with reading logs. Homework can only count 5% at the secondary level, no more than 5%. Elementary, it's not on any of our report cards or any of our standards-based report cards. No recess taken away or anything like that for missed homework. So there's a lot of work behind it that we came up with something that we really were proud of. And as you said too, like, kind of that, how far do you push the envelope or how far do you back off? And we could have done it a little easier. Right. Some people would have said, please just do 10%. Even my wife was like, do 10%. Nobody would be mad. And I'm like, yeah, but I really believe in this. And I think it's the right thing to do. And if you always settle and nobody ever pushes a little forward, then you're never going to make any progress. So, and that's that's the conversation I had with her. I said, if I can't be a leader that if I'm just trying to survive and keep my position and do all that and never making anything better, then that's not who I want to be as a leader I want to be. So, I think that's one of the things that we're pretty proud of.
Absolutely.
And your award last night was pretty great. When you talk about talking the talk, last night, Gary was surprised he's the Honor Society advisor. And we had our induction last night, and we actually they induct one or two faculty members each year. This year, our superintendent was inducted as just, and it's always a surprise and it's very emotional and flowers come out. And the kids did it, and then they're like, okay, they walked off stage as if it was done, and then they came back and, oh wait, we have one more. And on their own, they inducted Gary into the honorary member, and they even had the orchestra kids played the Office theme song because that's he's like an Office nut. He loves it, and it was really emotional.
Now on, Gary, I will refer to you as Dwight.
I like it.
You could be Jim, I guess, but we'll go with Dwight. That's
good. I'll take any of them. It's all good. That was something you never forget. And what the kids said, the two beautiful speeches, and we talked walking the walk, and I was like, okay, like you don't go into the business for those moments, but when they happen, they're awesome, they're amazing, and it's something I'll never forget.
Yeah, and they get the girl who's doing it, who's giving the speech, is first thinks, and I'm getting like, I'm not whatever, but I'm like, oh my God, you start getting like emotional. It's like, oh, and he's always there for us. We can always count on him. I'm like, oh my God. And then she's reading, and I don't even know if she did this intentionally, but thank you for making schools better for kids. I'm like, oh, that's the title of the book. She got that in her speech too. Like, did she know that or not? So it was.
That's very cool. That's a perfect segue towards I was literally writing down a question while you were talking, Kris, but now I'm going to just go to this question. You'll see how it's perfectly what just happened to you last night, Gary. So you talked early on, Gary, about the conversation you had with your daughter who scored this 80%. Mm-hmm. And she looked at herself as this failure or just not reaching her potential because of that number. In schools everywhere, even in New York, schools are now labeled by their numbers. Yes. And their AYP and student growth and proficiencies. We've got numbers galore.
Right.
You got a book coming out right now, and you're looking at those sales numbers. I know you are. You're going to want to see where it is on the ranks.
I won't have to look because Kris will do it for me and tell me.
I'm like, come on, when's the pre? It's like you can get it on Kindle now. When can you pre-buy the other?
Right. Yeah.
It's not up there yet. Where is it?
Absolutely. But numbers are a reality. You talked about the fact that you guys do fantasy baseball and you're constantly looking at the stats. I mean, numbers are reality in the real world. But the numbers don't define your success. Kris, you mentioned how you see success because you helped change an idea and you brought forth a policy that's going to truly change practice. And Gary, you said you just had a moment last night you'll never forget because you realized the impact you made on these kids. And it's like these big ideas that help define your success. Going forward, since you've already had some of these big moments now, what's going to define your success in the coming year?
For me, if my groups, and I'm going to boil it down to my groups and my daughter lumped in that, if they can realize that learning isn't about a number and you're going to make mistakes. And one of the things I really want to change is I know the number's there and I know I can't get rid of the number. I wish I could. I know I can't, but there's ways to come up with that number that's more fair for kids, that would allow them to experience, the failure. As an English teacher, we talk about writing process and we're constantly revising, as writers, we're doing the same thing. We look at our first draft and it's like, but by the time we go through it a few times, it's great, but if we stop grading them after that one and done, or if we give them and it's a one and done, instead of showing them, in the real world, you practice without it and you keep revising. And I think we can get there with that. So if I can instill that culture into them, that would be a success. So, and that would be my long-term goal too for all students. And, my daughter who's just entering middle school, she's absolutely crushing it in middle school. I have to put this in here in case she listens to this. She's an A student and she works hard, but I don't want her to, lose sight of, taking the shortcuts because of the grade. And that's what we've created in a lot of ways in our system, where shortcuts are valued. The kid who's good at playing the job of school, we've enabled the airdrop culture where, they're airdropping assignments and the job share and everything like that.
Yeah.
Instead of them genuinely learning because they love to learn. And if you set that environment, and I think every subject can do that. I've seen amazing math teachers set that up where kids, have the opportunity to practice math without any penalty before their assessment. And then even then they can make up the assessment, because what's more important, the number or the fact that the kid actually learned? And everyone learns differently. It takes me forever to do certain things where, baseball, very quick, tell me a guy and I got his number. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this last night in terms of that number culture and because like you said, the reality is it matters. And, you have to do well in the SATs if you want to go to one of the top colleges, right? And you have to have a certain GPA and there's certain things that you have to do. And nobody wants their kids disadvantaged. And I'm thinking last night, it's like, you have these crazy ideas when you're laying up or wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, should we do like like in schools, a Tim Ferriss idea, how he has Tim Ferriss is, I love listening to his podcast where he has the 80-20, like we're still like, you get 80% of the results with 20% of the work. And, kind of the other stuff is you spend so much time on it, doesn't really give you that much progress. School's a game, as Gary said, and we're trying to break that mold of having school not be a game, getting kids excited about learning and passionate and what they're finding. And I'm saying like how bad would it be if schools out there said, we're going to teach the kids the game. Let's teach our kids the game. Hey, here's what you need to do to get, this and this and to do well in the SAT and to pass reads. Because sometimes we keep it such a secret, right? Like we hold everything so tightly, right? So let's teach them how to beat the game and how to play the game. And then we can really spend our time with having them find what they're passionate about. Hey, listen, guys, you got to do this because you have to pass this region. So here's the types of problems and here's some things you can do and you're falling behind or whatever it is. But now once you figured out the game, now we can do something passionate. It's probably a crazy idea, but it's things that went through my mind.
I think it's spot on. I think you both bring up some awesome points here, and I'll use baseball because that's where you guys are right now. You're living in the baseball world. And
who do you like? Who do you like, Dave? Who's your team?
I'm not going to say I'm a Tigers fan because they've got the worst record in the league right now. So but the analogy still going to pay.
We're trying to make it to a playoff game.
Yeah. the analogy still works here. So you talk about playing a game. So let's just use baseball, and that. Our job is to kind of change the rules of the game, if you will. There's been a lot of talk about speeding up the game of baseball, speeding up Major League Baseball, and bringing like a pitch count or a pitch clock to the game. Yep. And it's something that they've experimented with in the minor leagues, and they're looking at bringing it up and trying to speed up the game. But that's not something that the commissioner just sat back and said, I'm going to do this, let's do it. He's got a rules committee that he brings together, comprised of owners and players. Retired players and current players to say, how would this impact you? And they all have a voice in it.
Right.
I'm a big believer that if you get people to weigh in, you don't have to get them to buy in.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Far too often, we spend our time in schools trying to get kids to just buy into our process, to buy into the way we're doing it, as opposed to if school is a game, inviting the players in.
Showing this is why this is important. This is. That isn't that important. Oh, it isn't? No. You know what? If this is what would happen if you didn't do that. Just being so honest with them.
Exactly. Yeah. Like even today, I went into my class, after the magical night last night, and a lot of them are sitting in my class. And I wasn't feeling comfortable with how we've been working. So I just sat down and was like, what can I do better?
That's it.
And we had a 40-minute conversation about what they need from me in class to make it better. Now I have homework over the weekend for me.
You have home learning.
I need to hear their voice. It's a brand new course, and I wasn't comfortable, with the start of the year, but I admitted that to them, and they gave me really good stuff. Now I feel like I have a plan because, like you said, let them have a seat at the table and hear it. So
and that seat at the table might be through a formalized process, like changing board policy to impact homework and home learning, or they might just give you feedback. And Gary, you hit on this by the way that they act. If kids are able to airdrop assignments, it gives us a lot of insight as to whether or not they value the assignment.
Right.
or whether or not that assignment has any value whatsoever. I think that's a powerful statement. You know, I'm a firm believer. We talk a lot about how we need to teach kids about overcoming failure and perseverance, and that we live in a society where we have to edit and revise and change things. But you know what? Our kids already live in that world. Only in schools do we not let that happen. You just look at Instagram, and kids take 15 different pictures to get the one they want. They understand that they can delete. Even the dating market these days, using social media, swipe left and swipe right, you can pick and edit. Our kids know this stuff. We don't listen. They're already telling us that they live in a society, and they understand they live in a society where you are able to fix things that you break and edit things that aren't perfect. But yet in our schools, we say, we're not going to listen to that. We're going to force you to live in this little bubble where you get one time to do things, to demonstrate proficiency and mastery. And if you don't do it, you're doomed for the rest of your life. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And again, it goes back to a lot of what we do in schools doesn't seem to make sense, right? It's just, why are we doing that? Oh, because, we did that. And a lot of times it's fear too. Like if Gary needs, to come in late because he's taking his little sister off the bus, or he can't get up, or whatever it is, and we don't, we don't give him detention or have him miss more class because he's missed class, which never made any sense to me. But there's that fear that, well, if Gary's allowed to come in late, everybody's going to.
Everybody's going to, yeah.
Or if this one gets away with it, they're all going to do it. And the reality is that at least in my experience, that's not the case. And that's kind of what we've been talking a lot about. How do you make your school district the best? How do you make your class the best? How do you make your building best? You figure out each kid as an individual and see what is it that they need, and then do our damnedest to give it to them as an entire building. And that's kind of what we think should be the way to handle things. And I'm sorry, I get I get the Italian in me, I get the hands going, I get passionate about this stuff. But
it's so good. It's so good. So I want to ask a question, and you might not have an answer to this. You don't even want to share. I don't know. So the two of you guys seem like you see eye to eye on things, other than your fantasy baseball teams.
Yeah.
Are there things that you guys have wrestled with recently? Maybe it's not a big idea, but is there ever tension? Or if there is tension, does it stay in the room, and then once you open the doors, you guys are lockstep?
I can tell you just from, there was one time a few years back when we were looking at revising our writing program. And I had this moment of pride, like, I can do this. I can do it myself. We don't need to bring anyone in. And he let me say my piece, and then he said, call me up. I need you to do this. And that was it. That was it.
I don't even remember that. But
no, it was, I need, and it was the best decision we ever made, because the person we brought in is really making an impact. We're working well together, and our department and our entire writing program has moved forward because of that decision. But at first, that could have been one, and that was early on in our friendship too, but just the way, I really need you to do this, and here's why. And once I heard it, it's like, okay, done, that kind of thing. So, and
there is very, we don't always agree on everything, but I don't, I don't remember any times where I was, mad at Gary, oh, he's messed this up or anything like that. But something I'm working on this year is, when you're doing the whole, the whole Brené Brown thing and reading that, is like being very clear with people if they didn't meet my expectations, right? Or if I disagree, or if, because a lot of times in the past I would harbor anger, or I would, I would want to be, get back and, be vengeful. And it's like, I realize how small-minded that is, and how that's not the type of leader that I want to be. So if somebody doesn't do something, being very clear to say, yeah, I was disappointed, and here's why, and that's okay, but let's move on to the next time. So, if Gary and I were to disagree, I would be honest with him, and I have a closer relationship with him than many, but I think he would do the same for me. And he has come to me at times, and other people in our district have come to me and said, I don't know about this, be careful, or I don't know that I agree. And, at first, we kind of get our backs up, and then we realize these people are looking out for the best interest of me and our district, and they care about me, and it's, never easy to have those conversations. So that's something that I want to be able to do this year.
That's good.
More consistently.
No, it's good. Again, it goes back to the idea of what we do, they do.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We tell teachers on a daily basis that the relationships matter. We need them to really understand their kids and actually like their kids and have these relationships with them. But then if we model that in the real world where the adults live, you have those relationships, you can't provide feedback, you can't be critical, you can't grow each other, then we're being hypocrites. Again, we have to model what we expect, because kids will see through it, and teachers see through it. Everybody in the world sees through it. So just, if you're going to say it, live it and be it.
And that's the same thing, right? I mean, you made such a good point there, because what do we want from our teachers? We want them to see all the strengths in the kids in their classroom, even if they are not, doing certain things that they would have expected. So you have to find the strengths of that student, whether they're an L, whether they're a special ed student, whether they're coming from trauma or a difficult home or from poverty. We want you to find their strength. But yet, if I'm writing teachers off or other staff members off and not looking to do the same, then how am I modeling that with you said? That was such a good point. It really is.
And just imagine if all of our teachers had to wear on their lanyards, they had their own little label as to whether or not they were at risk, or if they were special ed, or if they had to walk with the labels like we make our kids walk with the labels. It would not be good for our culture and climate. So
right. And it's the same thing. We talk about trauma, and I'm sure you guys have that there, but a lot of our teachers have dealt with trauma, right? Mm-hmm. Or a lot of our teachers are dealing with something going on in their lives, so they may be acting a way that they wouldn't normally act, and they need somebody to lift them up. Exactly. So, and I don't know, David, you're kind of in that new role, and I had the pleasure over the summer of seeing Ken Blanchard and Simon Sinek do this thing down in New York. It was amazing. But what they said in the talk was, as you move up in an organization, your job isn't anymore doing as much. So you're not selling the widgets. You're not making the widgets. You're, in our case, delivering the curriculum, or whatever it may be. Your job is to take care of all the people that are doing that, so that they can do it the best way that they can. And that's kind of how I'm trying to view my job this year. Is my job is about my people and making sure that I'm supporting them. I'm cutting away the red tape for them. I'm giving them a pickup when they need it. I'm fighting a fight for them and taking a hit for them when that's happening. So that's what I want to try to. You asked before about what would be success this year. That would be success for me, that I'm better at kind of lifting everybody up. And again, some days you're better at it than others, and some days you fail at it. Right. But you keep plugging and keep coming back and trying to do that. And
something I appreciate about both of you guys, and it's come out very clearly just in this talk, is we talked early on about you've both been doing this now for 2 decades plus, and what you're in essence trying to do is change the way that you taught back in the day and trying to change the next generation. But I'm also hearing loud and clear from you guys that you want to change who you were even last year and who you were yesterday, and that you guys, again, you're walking that. You're not trying to tell people just follow what I do and you're going to be amazing. You're trying to step up and say, if I'm challenging you to get better, I'm going to get better too. So kudos to you guys, man. That's awesome. I hear it loud and clear.
Thanks. Thank you. It's a struggle, every day, but it's like what it's about.
Yeah, because people look at you like you're the experts and you're supposed to know it all. And they're going to do so even more once that book comes out. They're going to expect you to just have the answers.
Right.
Being real, saying, nah, I'm still in the journey too, guys. I don't have it all. It's huge.
No, I still mess up in the classroom. 22 years in, the first couple of days I did an activity and I thought I had it, and then I panicked. So when I ran my first department meeting, I told them, I was like, hey, this is what I did. This is what happened. And I failed. Could we make this better? And I think people appreciated that too.
That's cool.
I'm more apt now to share my failures because, like you said, the first couple of years of writing, it became like, oh, you know everything. And no, I really don't. So I think I need to be more vocal with sharing when I mess up and how I recover from that. I think that's important because we all do.
Like the other day I was having a meeting. It was it was early in the morning, 9:45, 10 o'clock. And it's and I find myself, and I'm with a colleague, and I'm talking about complaining about somebody else, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? I wrote it right in my journal this morning. I'm going to be, not talk about people, be in the positive. And then here I am. So I'm going to stop right now. You catch yourself doing those things because human nature a lot of times is to, complain or, and how I don't want to be that. I want to be better at that. So, I'm working on it.
That's good. It's a lesson that I'm practicing every single day, and I don't want to plug my own book here. We're here to talk about yours, but that's the essence of the book I just wrote, of Bold Humility. I started off in my career thinking I was supposed to be the answer guy. As a classroom teacher, I had 150 kids a day expecting me to have all the answers, and that boosted my own ego and my confidence and my swagger. And I thought, okay, I can go into the school administration thing because I've got this down. And I thought, I became a leader. I'm just supposed to have all the answers. I want all the teachers to come to me so I can just give them my wisdom. And it was almost like the emperor wasn't wearing clothes, and I thought that nobody could see it. Everybody saw that arrogance, but not me. And what I've come to understand is that vulnerability is a lot more attractive than arrogance. That if you're willing to simply say and own what you can't do and your shortcomings, you'll draw more people into your circle than being the answer guy. So I think that that's this magnetic quality that I'm already picking up from you guys, is that you guys are willing to say, hey, I don't have this. Let's figure this out together. And that's so good. So good.
Thank you. No, thanks. And it's what you said is true. It is like, how do you, how do you look at that vulnerability and say what I'm not good at? And, it's that challenge, like, to say, like, when I'm not being productive at work, like when I need to go home and not stay until late, or not, how do you judge that? Because, I used, you wear that badge of honor. Like, I never take a day. I haven't taken a day in 25 years, and it's like, well, I came in with strep throat one year and I'm giving it to strep throat to everybody, like, who am I doing any favors for? So, taking a look at those weaknesses and what you can and cannot do so that you can be the best you, I guess.
That's good. Well, since I took the opportunity to stand on my own little soapbox and self-promote, I'm going to flip it now. It's going to be your opportunity. Okay. Now, you've done the TED Talk thing before, and you know how difficult that is to take all these big ideas and shrink them into like 14 to 18 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When you're peddling a book and selling the ideas in a book that has hundreds of pages in it, and you got 30 seconds to try to capture an audience, to capture somebody to make that purchase and to say, this book is going to change what you do, is super hard. It's like writing a tweet in real time, man. You got to take this big idea and put it into 280 characters. So I'm going to ask both of you now. You're going to have like 30 seconds from the teacher and the admin. Why is your book going to be a book that people should pick up and read to grow and learn?
Go ahead. All right. Teacher first.
The teacher first.
So you can
take So I think what makes our book unique is that we attack issues from both perspectives. And oftentimes, books only come from this singular thing where it's either a top down or it's a teacher perspective, where we both, through conversations, we're not lecturing. And like, as we've talked about, we talk about our failures in there and how we're trying to improve. And, seeing it from all sides, I think really, other than the kids, really is what makes us unique. That's the next one.
Teacher, men, and the student.
And the student, that's right.
You got the sequel planned. I love it.
Yeah. So, so the structure of the book is we pick a topic that we feel is an area that maybe we can do better in our education system, and we write a kind of an intro, and then Gary writes it from the teacher's point of view. I write it from the administrator's point of view. We have some guests that do interludes and their thoughts on it. And I really think, as Gary said, it gives you the perspective of both sides. And also we've built in some ideas on how you might be able to do that, and some different activities. And we could, if I were back in my principal seat again, it's something that I'd like to use to say, hey, in our district, we're looking at building trust. So here's somebody from a teacher point of view of what they want from an administrator, and here's something from an administrator point of view. So how can we use what they're saying to bring us together as a staff? Or if we wanted to talk about grading or homework or whatever topic it may be, I could certainly see, teachers and administrators using that as a resource in faculty meetings or in a PD day or something along those lines. And, I think we're just tell it how it is. We're open and have some good stories to share. Some of them may be a little off color, but
New York boys talking on the page. I love it. Right. No, I'm super excited to get a hold of it. So the teacher and the admin is going to be available everywhere. By the time people are listening to this, it is already available everywhere. So get yourself a copy. It sounds like it's the perfect fit if you just need to enhance your culture and your climate, if you need to enhance your communication, if you just want to see the world through a different lens. It's not an us versus them, it's a we type of book. It hits on content and curriculum as well as life. So I really don't know what this book is missing. So if you're not reading it, you're definitely missing out. So make sure you go grab it today. Anything else you guys want to say before we wrap this up today?
No, it's been great. Again, as we talked about earlier, connecting with people and kind of putting yourself out there, talking to you and having someone that really thinks very similar to how we do. I'm sure, if we were working together in the same district, that we would kind of be all sharing
ideas. You'd be in the fantasy baseball league.
And you'd be in our fantasy baseball league, So a little known fact, Gary was actually a sports writer as well in another life. And he was a I think he had 2 covers of USA Today Sports section. He had gotten for baseball stuff, and you used to write for Baseball America or Baseball
USA Today.
Right,
USA Today, and they had their own magazine.
Their own magazine, yeah. So
Baseball Digest.
Baseball Digest, yeah. So
that was a long time ago.
Yeah, but yeah, it's been a great journey, and it's been great to connect with you some more on this podcast.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I appreciate it so much. I know there's going to be people out there that are going to be connecting to you and going out there and picking up that book, and those connections are going to continue to grow. So I appreciate it. And to all of you out there, go get the guy's book. It's awesome. Get it today.